When Ethan Liu came home, there was a damp, rainy chill clinging to him. His tall figure appeared in the entryway, and as he took off his suit jacket, there was just the right touch of wariness on his face. "Annie, I'm back," he said. I walked forward and naturally took the expensive, custom-made suit from his hands, my fingers brushing the fine worsted wool fabric. "You must be tired. The rain outside was really heavy, right? Go take a hot shower. I already made ginger tea for you." My voice was soft, gentle as always. For 7 years I had played this role, Annie Shu, the perfect fiancée who cooked for him, cared for him, and looked after him in every possible way. He lowered his head and pressed a kiss on my forehead, his lips cold. "Home is still the best. With you here, no matter how fierce the storm outside is, I feel at peace." I smiled as I watched him walk into the bathroom. The sound of rushing water echoed out, separating our two spaces completely. I held his suit, ready to take it for pressing. It was a habit I never broke. My fingers slid into the inner pocket out of habit, checking to see if there was anything he needed taken out. But then my fingertips touched something with an unusual hardness and thickness. I paused for a moment. It wasn't the Mont Blanc pen he always carried, nor his business card holder. Slowly, almost as if I were probing for the truth, I pulled the items out. 3 things. The first was a bright red marriage certificate. The gold national emblem on the cover reflected a cold, mocking light under the warm yellow lamp. My hands trembled as I opened it. The groom's column showed Ethan Liu, his flamboyant, sweeping signature, one I knew so well I could trace it with my eyes closed. And in the bride's column was a name I didn't recognize at all. Lily Lin. The registration date was from a month ago, the exact week he claimed he was in Singapore, negotiating a critical project. The second item was a folded itinerary. Destination, Santorini, Greece. The dates were set for the day after our wedding, a honeymoon suite for 2, a candlelight dinner, an Aegean Sea sunset cruise. Every detail was as romantic as a dream that didn't belong to me. My heart felt as if an invisible hand had clenched it tightly, making it hard to breathe, but I forced myself to look at the last item. It was a printed, 4D color ultrasound image. A tiny life was curled inside a warm uterus, its outline already clear. In the bottom right corner, it said 16 weeks pregnant. Time, place, people, evidence, everything was there. I stood frozen, feeling all the blood in my body rush upward in an instant, then drain away completely in the next second. My hands and feet turned ice cold, like they had just been taken out of a freezer. The expensive Swiss mechanical clock in the living room ticked loudly, each sound clear, as if counting down the 7 years of my youth. 1 minute. I allowed myself only 1 minute to be stunned. Tears quickly gathered in my eyes, my vision beginning to blur. But I suddenly lifted my head and stared at the ornate crystal chandelier on the ceiling, forcing every tear that was about to fall back into my eyes, until none escaped. Crying was the most useless thing in this world. I took a deep breath. The tearing pain in my chest was forcibly pressed down by my rationality. I walked to the silent balcony. The cold glass window brought the chill of the rainy night through, instantly sobering me. I took out my phone. My fingertips slid steadily across the screen until I found the number I knew by heart, our wedding's planning director. The call connected, and a warm, enthusiastic voice came through. "Miss Shu?" When the voice on the phone asked, "Good evening, Miss Shu. Do you have any new ideas?" I leaned against the cold glass and looked at the city outside, its lights blurred by the rain. My voice was so calm that even I was surprised. "Director Wang, the process stays the same." I paused for a moment, then said each word clearly. "But all the materials needed for the wedding, including photos and videos, must be replaced. I'll send the new ones to you within 2 days." After hanging up, I deleted the call record. Then I placed the 3 damning pieces of evidence back into Ethan's suit pocket, as if nothing had ever happened. The sound of the shower stopped. Ethan Liu walked out, wrapped in a bathrobe, water still dripping from his hair. When he saw me standing on the balcony, he came over and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "What are you looking at? You seem lost in thought." His warm body pressed against my back, his chin brushing my hair with an intimate tone. I turned around and met his deep eyes that had once held everything I believed in. I reached up and gently helped him wipe the water from his hair, my face showing a perfect smile. Nothing, I said softly. I was just thinking. 3 days from now, our wedding will definitely be very, very spectacular. He didn't understand what I meant by spectacular. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the post-rain mist into the dining room. Like always, I prepared Ethan's favorite breakfast, a sunny side-up egg cooked to a perfect medium, 2 slightly charred slices of whole wheat toast, and a cup of hand-brewed Blue Mountain coffee. At the table, he cut into his egg with elegant precision while skimming through the financial news, occasionally talking to me about wedding details. Annie, yesterday, Director Wong confirmed with me about the background music for the ceremony, he said. We'll use the song from our first date, La Vie en Rose. What do you think? He looked up, a questioning smile in his eyes. I was sipping milk, and a sharp pain flashed through my chest. La Vie en Rose. That was the song he sang and played for me on my 18th birthday, on a boat along the Seine in Paris. Back then, his eyes were clear, and his heart was full of me. Sure, I said, setting down my glass and smiling. I like it. My compliance pleased him. Right, he continued. Should we leave a seat for your family on the guest list? Even though you said you cut ties with them, they're still your family. The family he meant was the Mo family, my real surname. 7 years ago, to be with him, I had given up a full scholarship to Wharton, given up my position as the sole heir to the Mo Group, and came to this city with him under the pseudonym Annie Shu, a name I used for painting. I told him I was a girl, abandoned by her family, with no one to rely on, and he believed me. No need, I lowered my eyes, letting my voice soften with just the right touch of sadness. They won't come. Having you at our wedding is enough. A trace of tenderness flashed through his eyes as he reached out and held my hand. Annie, you've suffered because of me. Don't worry, once my company goes public, I'll give you the best the world has to offer. I'll make sure you stand proudly in front of everyone. I let him hold my hand, feeling the warmth of his palm, but inside, all I felt was an icy wasteland. The best the world has to offer. His version of best probably meant walking the smooth path I paved for him, while he shamelessly shared the fruits of victory with another woman. My thoughts drifted back to the past. I remembered how 5 years ago, when his startup's funding chain collapsed and bankruptcy was looming, I secretly sold the only thing my mother had left me, a diamond necklace worth tens of millions, to save his company. When I thought back to those moments, I remembered how I once used a false identity as an angel investor to inject life-saving funds into his company. He had been ecstatic, saying he must have met a true benefactor, never realizing that this so-called benefactor slept right beside him every night. I remembered, too, how 3 years ago he desperately needed an entry point for a critical overseas project, but had no way in. It was I who contacted one of my father's old subordinates, Uncle Chen, a man who had long since retired from the spotlight. Under the guise of a friend's introduction, he arranged a seemingly casual cocktail gathering so Ethan could make the right connection. Ethan had come home glowing with pride, saying it proved his ability, that fate was finally smiling on him. And I remembered the countless late nights when I analyzed financial reports for him, drafted business strategies, and revised project proposals. All the business talent that should have shone on Wall Street, everything I was capable of, was hidden behind the gentle, dutiful persona of Annie Shu, becoming nothing more than stepping stones beneath his feet as he climbed higher and higher. Ethan was like a frog, being slowly boiled in warm water, gradually growing accustomed to comfort, to success he didn't have to fight for. He began to see my efforts as natural, my silence as mediocrity. He must have assumed I was just some lucky woman who had found a promising man early, and that without him, I would be worthless. That was why he dared to betray me so recklessly, because he was certain I had neither the foundation to leave him nor the power to retaliate. What are you thinking about? Ethan's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. I looked up at him and smiled, gentle and harmless. Just thinking about how hard our journey has been, I said softly. Ethan, I'm really happy. Yes, I was happy. Happy because after 7 years of living in this beautiful illusion, I was finally completely awake. After breakfast, he stood up, ready to leave for work. Before heading out, he gave me another hug. I have dinner with some important investors tonight. I'll probably be back late. Don't wait up. Important investors again. I nodded and helped straighten his tie. Then drink less, okay? The moment the door closed behind him, the smile on my face vanished instantly. I walked into the study and opened my private laptop. It looked ordinary on the outside, but the internal system was secured with top-tier encryption. Inside was an entirely different world. I logged into an encrypted email and began composing a new message. The recipient was a name I hadn't contacted in 7 years, Assistant Quinn. The message contained only 3 short instructions. For the next 3 days, I lived exactly like the perfect bride-to-be Ethan believed me to be. I accompanied him to retrieve his long, customized wedding suit, a handmade Italian piece from a top-tier brand, tailored precisely to enhance his increasingly imposing presence. Standing before the mirror in it, he looked at his reflection with pride. "Annie, how does it look?" he asked. I stood behind him, looking at him through the mirror and also at the woman in the reflection wearing a simple white dress and a bright, flawless smile. I stepped forward, smoothed a faint crease on his shoulder, and said softly, "It looks great. You look good in anything." There wasn't even a trace of hatred in my eyes, only the perfect amount of admiration and affection. His vanity swelled with satisfaction. He didn't know that while he was trying on the suit, I had already used my phone to take photos of the brand, the model, and every detail of the craftsmanship. Together, we visited the wedding banquet hotel to confirm the venue setup and final menu one last time. Standing before the massive floral backdrop made of tens of thousands of white roses, he said proudly, "I told Director Wong these roses must be the freshest ones flown in by air freight." "You're the woman who deserves white roses the most," Ethan said proudly. I held onto his arm, resting my head lightly against his shoulder. My voice carried a touch of warmth, just the right amount of moved affection. "You really went all out," I murmured. But inside I was laughing coldly. White roses symbolized pure love. Yet he was using the money I earned for him to build this grand illusion, trying to mask his filth with purity. It was absurd, pathetically, ridiculously absurd. During the day, I was Annie Shu, a woman immersed in the fantasy of happiness. But at night, whenever Ethan came home late or didn't come home at all, I became my real self again. Winmo. My study turned into my war room. Emails from Assistant Quinn flowed into my encrypted inbox one after another, shockingly efficient. The first email contained all of Ethan's company's financial statements from the past 3 years, internal project files, and the complete list of core clients. I flipped through them page by page. Most of these numbers and projects had passed through my hands at some point. I understood the lifeline of this company, its strengths and weaknesses, far better than Ethan did himself. The second email was the entire background report on Lily Lin, an ordinary girl from an ordinary family, graduate of a third-rate college, working as the front desk receptionist at Ethan's company. Her social media was filled with branded handbags, high-end restaurants, and expensive gifts she just happened to share. Most captions read something like, "Another day of being spoiled. Thank you, sweetheart." And the dates of these posts matched perfectly with the days Ethan claimed he had business trips or dinners with clients. She was a woman with a clear target, someone who knew exactly how to use her youth and supposed fragility as weapons. The third email was a short message from Assistant Quinn. "Miss Mo, the special gift you requested is ready. It will be delivered to Miss Lin before 9 a.m. on the morning of the wedding." Reading it, the corner of my lips curved into a cold, sharp smile. The gift I had prepared for Lily Lin was an invitation, a one-way invitation straight to hell. But information gathering wasn't enough. I still had the most important task, replacing the wedding materials. I opened a file folder on my computer, one that had been sealed away for years. Inside were the things I had quietly recorded under the identity of Annie, Ethan drunk and confessing his ambitions and his hunger for high society, the insincere things he said to partners just to secure a project, and the secret phone recordings of him calling Lily behind my back. I gathered all of it, along with high-resolution scans of the marriage certificate, the honeymoon itinerary, and the 4D ultrasound photo, and put them together. Then I personally edited everything into a 10-minute video. The video opened with 7 years of sweet photos of Ethan and me, set to the backdrop of his solemn proposal vows. But at the 3-minute mark, the tone shifted. The evidence, ugly, undeniable, flashed across the screen one by one with harsh, jarring background music. The video ended on the ultrasound image. Next to it, in bright, blood-red letters, were the words, "Congratulations to Mr. Ethan Liu and Miss Lily Lin. Wishing you a wonderful marriage and a lifetime of happiness." After finishing everything, I encrypted the file and sent it to Director Wang from the wedding planning company. The email subject line read, "Final Wedding Blessing Video." And I knew that when this video played on the massive screen at the wedding, when that video played on the giant LED screen, the impact would be nothing short of devastating. The night before the wedding, Ethan surprisingly didn't have any social events. He came home early. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin in the hollow of my neck, his voice carrying a rare trace of emotion. "Annie, tomorrow we're getting married. Sometimes it feels like a dream." I turned around and looked straight into his eyes. In a soft voice I asked, "And aren't you afraid the dream might end?" He froze for a moment, then quickly tightened his embrace. "Silly girl, as long as you're here, my dream will never end. This is going to be the most perfect wedding in the world." I let him hold me, my heart calm and steady. On the day of the wedding, the morning light was bright. I woke early. Unlike an ordinary bride, I wasn't surrounded by makeup artists, bridesmaids, or the bustling joy and excitement that usually filled such mornings. That day, I was completely alone. In the walk-in wardrobe, I applied my own makeup, delicate, cold, and immaculate. Then, instead of wearing the wedding dress prepared long ago, I chose a sharp, perfectly tailored black Chanel skirt suit. In the mirror, my face was serene, my gaze razor-sharp. The gentle, sweet Annie Shu had vanished completely. In her place stood Win Mo, the heir of the Mo Group. At 9 a.m., my phone vibrated. A message from Assistant Quinn. "Miss Mo, the gift has been delivered. The recipient has signed for it." The corner of my lips lifted slightly as I imagined Lily Lin's expression at that very moment. Elsewhere, in a high-end apartment in the city center, Lily Lin indeed received a massive gift box. There was no sender information, only a printed address label. Confused, she opened it. The moment she saw what was inside, she gasped sharply. It was a breathtaking Violaine custom wedding gown. Layers upon layers of lace and sheer tulle floated like clouds. The hem sparkled with thousands of tiny Swarovski crystals that glimmered enchantingly under the sunlight. She had once seen this gown in a magazine, priced in the 7 figures, the dream dress of countless women. She knew immediately that this was Annie's wedding dress. Ethan had bragged more than once about the grand wedding he had prepared for Annie, proudly mentioning how expensive and extravagant her dress was. On top of the gown lay an elegant card, beautifully handwritten in flowing cursive. "Some things will never belong to you, but today I'll let you have it. Wear it to witness your victory." There was no signature. Lily's heart began pounding violently. She instantly interpreted this as Annie's surrender and retreat. She imagined the gentle, obedient woman finally breaking under the pressure after discovering that Lily and Ethan had already registered their marriage and had a child. She pictured Annie giving up at last. And this card was her declaration of defeat. Ethan had said before that Annie had no one, that she couldn't survive without him, that she would never dare make trouble. And surely this gown had been arranged by Ethan himself. He was telling her, through this gesture, that he had chosen her, Lily, that she was the one meant to take Annie's place as the sole bride of the day. Once the thought took root, it grew wildly like weeds, consuming the last shred of her reason. Overwhelming joy drowned her completely. She hurried to strip off her clothes and, trembling with excitement, carefully put on the dreamlike wedding gown. The size fit her perfectly, neither too big nor too small. It was as if the gown had been tailored just for her. Lily stood before the mirror, staring at the beautiful, elegant woman reflected back at her, and a triumphant smile spread across her lips. She could already see herself marrying into wealth, becoming the envy of everyone, Mrs. Liu. "Annie, you lost," she whispered to the mirror, her voice soft but venomous. She immediately called for a car. The destination was the 6-star hotel where Ethan and I were holding our wedding. She didn't even bother calling him to confirm. She wanted to surprise him, a glorious, dramatic surprise that would prove she was the final winner. Filled with excitement, she believed she was rushing toward a grand ceremony made just for her. On the top floor of the hotel, the grand ballroom glittered under dazzling crystal chandeliers. The air was rich with the fragrance of white roses. The seats were filled. Nearly every influential person in River City was present. Everyone wore polite smiles, whispering to each other about the extravagance of this wedding of the century, and how the groom, Ethan Liu, had risen from an unknown young man to a rising star of the business world. Ethan stood tall in the center of the petal-covered stage, his posture perfect, his expression brimming with pride he could barely contain. Holding the microphone, he spoke passionately about the love story between him and me. 7 years ago, I met Annie. Back then, I had nothing. She gave me a home. She gave me the courage to fight. She was the brightest light in my life. His voice resonated through the entire hall. Such moving vows, if I didn't know the truth, even I might have been touched again. At that moment, I was sitting in the presidential suite of the other hotel tower. On the enormous TV screen in front of me, the live broadcast of the ballroom played in real time. I held a glass of champagne, relaxed, as though watching a movie that had nothing to do with me. Assistant Quinn stood behind me respectfully. "Miss Mo, Miss Lin has arrived downstairs. As per your instructions, the wedding planning team will guide her straight onto the stage." I gave a small nod and said nothing, only swirling the golden liquid in my glass. On the screen, the exhilarating wedding march finally began to play. The hall fell completely silent. All eyes turned toward the entrance of the ballroom. The massive carved doors slowly opened, and a figure in a pure white wedding gown stepped inside, the spotlight following her. Her veil hid her face, but the unmistakable violain gown drew a wave of gasps from the guests. Ethan's smile grew even brighter. He stretched out his hand toward the figure, his eyes full of anticipation. The guests applauded, showering blessings upon what they believed to be the perfect couple. The figure walked down the long red carpet, step by step, making her way onto the stage. She placed her hand into Ethan's. The host's voice rang out clearly. "Now, let our handsome groom unveil the veil of his beautiful bride and welcome happiness." Every eye in the room locked onto that thin piece of lace. Wearing a pampering smile, Ethan slowly lifted the veil. Time seemed to slow down at that very moment. When Lily Lynn's face, carefully made up but filled with triumph and bashful delight, was fully revealed, the smile on Ethan's face froze instantly. His pupils contracted violently. The curve of his lips stiffened like carved stone. His expression was a chaotic mix of shock, confusion, and a flicker of fear. The applause died abruptly. Guests turned to one another, whispers surging through the hall like a wave. Who? Who is that? Isn't the bride supposed to be Annie? Did they make a mistake? What's going on?" Lily still hadn't realized the strangeness of the atmosphere. Lifting her skirt slightly, she asked sweetly, "Ethan, aren't you surprised?" It was as if that voice snapped Ethan out of a trance, like a startled beast. He jerked his hand away from Lily's, his face turning ashen. Ethan lowered his voice and roared, "Why are you here? Where's Annie?" His loss of composure sent a shock through the entire hall. And at that exact moment, the massive LED screen behind the stage, originally displaying a romantic starry backdrop, suddenly went black. 1 second later, it lit up again, showing a blown-up image of a red marriage certificate. Groom, Ethan Liu, bride, Lily Lin. Then came the honeymoon itinerary. Then the 4D ultrasound. Then photo after photo of Ethan and Lily being intimate in different places. Even several audio clips of their indecent phone calls began to play. The wedding blessing video I edited so carefully had begun to roll. The entire banquet hall fell into a deathly silence. The only sound was Ethan's own sugary sweet words to Lily, so similar to the ones he had once told me. One by one, the guests' expressions shifted, from shock to disdain to an eager mocking delight as they watched the unfolding spectacle. Ethan completely snapped. His eyes were bloodshot like a trapped beast. He pointed at the screen, then at Lily, his lips trembling, but he couldn't force out a single word. Everything, his dignity, his success, the flawless image he had crafted so carefully, was crushed to dust by this video. Lily was stunned too. Her face turned ghostly pale. She stared at the evidence on the screen, then at Ethan's murderous expression, and finally realized the horrifying trap she had walked straight into. This "This wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered, tears spilling instantly. In the presidential suite, I watched the chaos unfold on the screen. I rose slowly, finishing the last sip of champagne. Then I said to Assistant Quinn, "Let the reporters downstairs know. The main character is about to appear." Meanwhile, the chaos in the banquet hall was spiraling further out of control. Ethan's parents rushed onto the stage, trying desperately to manage the situation, but only made everything even more humiliating. The guests acted as if they were watching the scandal of the year. Phones were raised everywhere, capturing every second of this historic downfall. At the same time, on the other side of the hotel, the International Conference Center was already lit bright as day by countless flashes. Reporters from every major media outlet in River City, along with top financial journalists from across the country, had gathered there. They believed they were attending an ordinary corporate press conference. None of them expected they were about to witness a seismic revelation. I stepped out from backstage, my steps steady and composed. The sound of my heels striking the floor echoed clearly in the silent hall. I wore a sharply tailored black suit dress, my long hair swept up to reveal a smooth forehead and a graceful swan-like neck. My makeup was flawless and cold, and my eyes swept calmly across every camera lens pointed at me. The moment I appeared, a commotion rippled through the room, followed by a storm of shutter clicks. "Excuse me, who are you? What is the topic of this press conference?" Reporters began firing questions even before I reached the podium. I walked to the center of the stage. Behind me, the giant screen lit up slowly, revealing a deep blue, imposing logo, Mo Corporation. I picked up the microphone, tested the sound, and then, in a cool and unwavering voice, declared to the world, "Hello, everyone. Allow me to introduce myself." My gaze swept straight through the cameras, as if I could see every person watching from behind their screens. "I am Win Mo of the Mo Corporation." The moment my name was spoken, the hall erupted instantly. Mo Corporation, one of the nation's most powerful business empires. Though always low profile, the Mo Corporation had immense power, and its successor had long been a mystery. Rumor had it that Chairman Mo had only one daughter, yet she had never appeared in public. No one expected her to step into the spotlight in such a way today. I ignored the rising chatter below the stage and continued, "Starting today, I will officially assume the position of CEO of Mo Corporation." The announcement landed like a bomb. Financial reporters practically lit up. This was without question the headline of the year. I paused, then shifted the tone, letting a subtle, meaningful smile appear on my lips. "In addition," I said, "I know all of you may be more interested in the commotion happening next door in the banquet hall." I deliberately stopped, making sure every camera squared in on me. Then, enunciating clearly, I said, "Please thank Mr. Ethan Liu for helping me clear a non-performing asset I've carried for 7 years, right on time." The phrase non-performing asset rolled off my tongue lightly, but it was filled with razor-sharp mockery and contempt. The room fell silent. Then an explosion of flashbulbs and frantic questioning followed. "Miss Mo, are you saying you are the rumored fiancée, Annie Xu? What exactly happened between you and Mr. Liu? Was the video at the wedding arranged by you? You hid your identity for 7 years. Does your high-profile return mean Mo Corporation is preparing a major business move?" I didn't answer any of them. I didn't need to. My goal had already been accomplished. I had tied the symbolic death of Annie Xu to the rebirth of Win Mo perfectly. From today on, Ethan Liu would no longer be seen as a rising star, but as a pathetic clown, a man who relied on a woman while maintaining a chaotic private life. And I, Win Mo, would return as both the victim and the awakened one, occupying the highest ground in public opinion. I gave a slight nod to the reporters, then turned and walked away, escorted by Assistant Quinn and my security team. Behind me, the reporters were still shouting, flashes still exploding like fireworks. I got into the black Rolls-Royce waiting outside. The car glided smoothly into the traffic. Leaning back against the soft leather seat, I watched the city blur past the window and finally let out a long breath. The real self I had suppressed for 7 years was finally, completely free. From the front seat, Assistant Quinn glanced at me in the rear-view mirror, concern and respect mixed in his eyes. "Miss Mo, what should we do next?" I unlocked my phone, pulling up the profile of Ethan's company. My gaze turned cold and focused. Whatever he's most proud of, I said quietly. We destroy that first. Quinn, I added, book me a flight to Berlin for tomorrow. Ethan, you think public humiliation at a wedding is where this ends? No, that was only the beginning. His company, Starforge Tech, had risen rapidly in recent years in the field of artificial intelligence, hailed as a dark horse in the industry. But right now, that dark horse's lifeline depended entirely on a chip order from Planck Precision Instruments in Germany. These custom high-performance chips were the core of their next-generation product and the key to securing their next round of financing. Ethan had spent nearly a year fighting for this order, and what I was going to do was make that year go up in smoke. The next day I arrived in Berlin, but I did not go to the headquarters of Planck Instruments. I didn't contact any executives at Planck Instruments, not a single one. That approach would be too slow, too obvious, and would only drag me into a long, exhausting commercial tug-of-war. What I needed was something more direct and far more ruthless. I went straight to Planck's upstream supplier, the company that provided their core raw material, high-purity silicon crystals. It was a family business named Walter Materials Technology. Mr. Walter, a German man in his late 70s, was stubborn, old-fashioned, and wary. His eyes were full of distrust and scrutiny as he looked at me, a young female CEO from the East, sitting across from him. In the reception room, he spoke in heavily accented English. Miss Mo, I'm afraid I must disappoint you. We have a partnership with Planck Instruments that has lasted over 20 years. We will not betray our old friends for any new offer. I smiled, not at all impatient. I reached into my handbag and placed a document gently before him. It wasn't a price quote. It was a detailed industry analysis report, one I had stayed up all night preparing, covering the global high-purity silicon crystal market forecast for the next 5 years, technological barriers, and potential risks. Mr. Walter, I began, my voice steady and confident, I'm not here today to discuss an order with you. I'm here to discuss a future for Walter Materials Technology and for Mo Corporation. I explained my proposal. Mo Corporation would acquire Walter Materials in full, preserve its brand and the independence of its existing management team, and invest massive capital to build a new R&D center and production base in Asia. It would help them break through current technological bottlenecks and seize the opportunities of emerging markets. You've devoted yourself to this small patch of the European market, I said. What you've gained is loyalty and stability. But what you've lost is the 60% global market growth that will unfold over the next 10 years. My finger tapped lightly on the report. I can help you get back everything you've missed. Mr. Walter's guarded gaze gradually shifted, from suspicion to surprise, and finally to unconcealed excitement and appreciation. Our meeting lasted a full 5 hours. By the time I stepped out of the Walter Materials building, an acquisition intent letter drafted by their lawyers had already landed in my inbox. 2 days later, the Mo Corporation website released a brief announcement. Mo Corporation has officially completed the full acquisition of Walter Materials Technology GmbH, Germany. At the end of the announcement, I instructed the PR team to add one seemingly casual line. To facilitate the global restructuring of our industrial supply chain, certain non-core clients may experience periodic delays in raw material delivery. We appreciate your understanding. The news sent ripples through the global business community. And in River City, inside the CEO office of Starforge Tech, Ethan's face turned instantly pale when he saw the headline. He frantically called Planck Instruments. Their response was blunt. Their raw material supply had been cut off, and they could no longer guarantee on-time chip production. They would pay the penalty fee, but the order would be postponed indefinitely. Indefinitely. For Starforge Tech, which was relying on that batch of chips as its lifeline, this was nothing short of a death sentence. Pulling the rug out from underneath him, I hadn't fought him for the order. I simply bought the upstream supplier that supplied the one who gave him the order. I didn't even need to appear in front of him to seize him by the throat of fate. On the phone, Assistant Quinn reported Ethan's reaction to me. Apparently, he had smashed everything he could get his hands on in his office. I stood at the window of my Berlin hotel room, overlooking the solemn, heavy lines of the city below. There wasn't the slightest ripple in my heart. Ethan, this was only the appetizer. Everything you took from me over the past 7 years, I will make you repay double. The collapse of the German chip order was the first domino to fall, triggering a catastrophic chain reaction inside Starforge Tech. The first to strike was the bank. Back when Ethan expanded his production line, he had used that chip order as collateral to obtain massive loans from several banks. Now that the order was void, the bank's risk control departments instantly detected danger. Collection calls flooded Ethan's office like a blizzard, demanding immediate repayment. Otherwise, asset freeze procedures would begin. Next came the suppliers. Those suppliers who once smiled at him and flattered him suddenly changed their faces overnight. They gathered downstairs at Starforge Tech, holding banners and demanding he settle the months of overdue payments. Cash flow had already been tight. Now it was suffocating. But the deadliest blow came from the capital market. Starforge Tech's ongoing Series B financing halted abruptly. Investors who once courted him eagerly all found excuses to cancel their meetings. Without new capital injections, Starforge Tech was like a car that suddenly stalled on a highway, unable to do anything except watch itself speed toward the edge of a cliff. Within 3 days, the company's stock price plunged 70%, turning it into little more than waste paper. Ethan fell into an unprecedented crisis. He began making frantic calls, using every connection he had ever boasted about, desperate for help. He called his best friend from college. The man hemmed and hawed, saying his finances were tight and he couldn't help. He called the government official, who once drank with him, and called him brother. The secretary answered politely, "The director is in a meeting." No explanation, no callback. He even swallowed his pride and tried to meet the business tycoons who once praised him endlessly at banquets. Without exception, all of them turned him away. He sat alone in his office, surrounded by cigarette butts on the floor, unable to understand. Why? Why had all the people who once gathered around him vanished overnight? Clutching his hair in frustration, he still failed to grasp the simplest truth. Those connections had never been his. That college buddy? His company received its government project only because I had asked Uncle Chen to help. That government official? He treated Ethan differently only because he knew Annie Shu was someone Uncle Chen valued. Those business leaders who once smiled upon Ethan, they did so because behind the polished, talented young entrepreneur persona I designed for him, they sensed a powerful, mysterious force backing him. They were never looking at Ethan. They were looking at me, Win Mo, and the colossal empire behind me, the Mo Corporation. For 7 years, I had been a puppeteer with flawless memory, hiding behind the curtain, pulling the strings, and making Ethan, my wooden puppet, dance on a glamorous stage. He thought the grace of the dance was his own. He never realized that once I released the strings, he would crash to the ground, nothing but a pile of useless, rotting wood. And now, I had let go. The dominoes continued to fall, one after another. From across the ocean in Berlin, I controlled everything through remote video conferences. Assistant Quinn updated me regularly. "Miss Mo, Ethan has begun selling his personal assets," he reported, "including the home that was meant to be your marital residence." I listened quietly, without emotion. He sold the cars under his name too, several luxury sports cars, in an attempt to plug the gaping hole in the company's finances. But it was like pouring a cup of water onto a burning desert. Useless. I stared at Ethan's haggard, bloodshot face on the screen, feeling nothing but indifference. This was only the beginning. The real despair was still ahead. I dialed Assistant Quinn's internal line. "Quinn, initiate the second plan," I said calmly. "It's time for him to taste what it feels like to be abandoned by everyone." Starforge Tech's core competitiveness came from its elite engineering team, led by its chief technology officer, Dr. Benjamin Wang. Ethan had poached that entire team from Silicon Valley with high salaries, and it was his greatest source of pride. He had repeatedly bragged in public about how visionary he was, how he had won over a group of geniuses with nothing but sincerity and dreams. What he never mentioned was that, to cut costs, he had quietly withheld most of the bonuses and profit shares he had originally promised them. Instead, he strung them along with empty dreams and endless big talk, trying to maintain their loyalty through illusions. And what I intended to do was tear that illusion apart, I didn't show up personally. Instead, I hired the top headhunting firm in the country. Their target was singular, the entire technical department of Starforge Tech. The offer they made to Dr. Wong's team was simple, direct, and impossible to refuse. First, the entire team would be hired as a group by Mo Corporation's newly established artificial intelligence laboratory. Salaries and positions would be doubled. Second, Mo Corporation would immediately compensate them for all the bonuses and dividends Ethan had withheld, and pay 3 times the penalty fees for breach of contract. Third, every team member would receive early-phase stock options from Mo Corporation and share in the profits of its future growth. These 3 conditions were like 3 precision-guided missiles, instantly shattering the last bit of morale Dr. Wong's team still had. At the same time, under my instructions, Assistant Quinn arranged for someone to post anonymously on a well-known industry forum. The title was, "Exposing How a Certain Rising Star CEO Exploits His Core Employees, Eye-Opening Details Inside." The post listed in detail Ethan's misconduct, withholding bonuses, misappropriating R&D funds, forcing brutal 996 work schedules. Attached were several censored internal email screenshots as evidence. The post was like a stone thrown into a still lake, instantly causing waves 1,000 layers deep. It was reposted wildly, blowing up the entire tech community overnight. When both money and morality tipped the scale in the same direction, people's loyalty collapsed completely. The next morning, when Ethan dragged his exhausted body into the company, he was greeted by an empty R&D center. Dr. Wong and the entire team, more than 30 people, had resigned collectively overnight. On the desk lay a handwritten letter from Dr. Wong. "Mr. Liu, we once believed in your dream, but dreams don't feed us. You disappointed us and made us realize that we are no longer on the same path." Ethan trembled violently as he held the letter. He stormed into Dr. Wong's office, only to find it already emptied out. His trusted right-hand team, his pillar, had been uprooted effortlessly by me. This blow was far more lethal than losing orders or funding. He began desperately calling Dr. Wong, but the phone was already powered off. What he didn't know was that at that very moment, Dr. Wong and his entire team were sitting comfortably inside a bright, spacious conference room at the Mo Corporation, and signing new employment contracts with me. Looking at this group of vibrant, brilliant engineers in front of me, a genuine smile appeared on my face. "Welcome to Mo Corporation," I said. "Here, your talent will receive the utmost respect, and the rewards you truly deserve." Dr. Benjamin Wong spoke on behalf of the team, gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you, President Mo. We will give our all." I nodded. Losing his company, losing his team, Ethan's world collapsed overnight. He fell from the clouds straight into the mud, from a rising business star admired by everyone, to a disgraced man everyone avoided like a plague-ridden stray dog. And the final straw that broke him came from the woman he once believed would bring him a new future, Lily Lin. The moment news of the collapsed chip order and Starforge Tech's crisis spread, Lily found out immediately. She became anxious, restless. The only reason she had chosen Ethan in the first place was his potential, his promise of a wealthy future. But now, that fantasy had evaporated into thin air. With her belly growing larger day by day, she began pressuring him relentlessly. "Ethan, what's happening with the company? What about our future? When the baby is born, what about formula? What about education funds? Have you even thought about any of that? Didn't you say you have so many friends? Go ask them for help. This is all because of that Annie. That bitch must be doing something behind our backs. Why won't you go beg her? Beg her to let us go." At first, Ethan tried to comfort her, insisting he would rise again. But as the pressure mounted each day, his patience burned away. Every complaint, every tear from Lily felt like a needle stabbing straight into his wounds. She became unbearable to him, annoying, suffocating. The woman he once saw as gentle, understanding, and fragile, his supposed soulmate, had now become a shrill harbinger of doom. Someone who only demanded and complained. Their arguments grew more frequent and more vicious. One day, in their cramped, dimly lit rental apartment, it exploded again. "Ethan, are you even a man?" Lily screamed hysterically. "Are you just gonna watch me and your child starve?" That sentence snapped something inside him. His eyes turned bloodshot as he grabbed her wrist hard. "Shut up. If it weren't for you, would things be like this? If you hadn't barged into the wedding on your own, would Annie have done this to me? He finally pushed all his failures, all his resentment, onto her shoulders. Lily was terrified by the twisted anger on his face, but she still fought back. Oh, now it's my fault? Who was the one who said he loved me, who promised to marry me, who told me Annie was helpless and easy to manipulate? Ethan, you're a coward. A spineless coward. The word coward hit him like a sledgehammer, crushing what remained of his fragile pride. He snapped. Raising his hand with all his strength, he slapped her hard across the face. The sharp crack echoed through the tiny room. Lily fell to the floor, clutching her cheek, staring at him in disbelief. She had never imagined that the man who once doted on her so desperately would ever lay a hand on her. She froze for a few seconds, then burst into even louder, more piercing sobs. The rental apartment was a mess, chaotic, suffocating. The love built on lust and lies had finally collapsed completely under the crushing weight of reality. At last, Ethan revealed his ugliest, most fragile true self. They started tearing into each other, hurting each other, like two wild animals trapped in a cage, and all of it, every scream, every slap, every breakdown, was captured clearly by the hidden cameras my people installed. I watched the video of those two pathetic, disgraceful individuals without a trace of expression on my face. While Ethan and Lily dragged each other toward mutual destruction, I decided it was time to deliver the final, fatal blow to this farce. After one particularly vicious fight, Lily ran away from home. With nowhere left to go, she ultimately chose to come find me. She waited for 2 hours at the cafe beneath my company building. When I finally arrived, she looked far more worn out than before. The once pretty face she had relied on was now filled with resentment and humiliation. Her belly was unmistakably swollen now. She sat across from me with a posture that was still irritatingly arrogant. "Annie, no, Win Mo," she gritted out, emphasizing every word. "I know it's you. What do you want? You've already destroyed Starforge. You've ruined Ethan. Isn't that enough?" I stirred my coffee slowly, not even looking at her. "No," I said calmly. "It's not enough." My bluntness caught her off guard. Then she switched instantly into a pitiful expression, eyes turning red in seconds. "Please, please let us go. Ethan already knows he was wrong. For the sake of the baby, please, just show mercy. This is all my fault. I was blinded by momentary foolishness. Come after me. Stop torturing him." What a performance. She really thought that waving the unborn child like a bargaining chip, playing the martyr, would earn my sympathy. Unfortunately for her, she was facing the wrong audience. I lifted my eyes and studied her quietly, a cold, mocking smile curving on my lips. "Do you actually believe all of this is your fault?" Before she could respond, I pulled a document from my briefcase and slid it across the table toward her. "Before you beg for him, why don't you take a look at this first?" Confused, Lily picked it up. It was a trust fund certificate. She flipped to the back, and the moment she saw the beneficiary name, her face drained of color. Beneficiary, Ethan Liu. And the date of establishment, the very day after they registered their marriage. Watching her soul visibly leave her body, I generously offered an explanation. "This is an irrevocable personal trust," I said evenly. Ethan transferred 90% of his personal assets into this fund, meaning if anything happens to him or if he gets divorced, this money remains legally protected as his property. No one can touch a single cent. My voice was soft, but the words landed like a hammer shattering her chest. "You thought he loved you. You thought registering the marriage meant he wanted to give you a title." I tilted my head slightly. "No. He only did it so he could have an extra bargaining chip when he finally had to face me." "You thought he would share his victories with you?" I pointed at the document. "Look at it. He never planned on sharing anything with anyone." I leaned forward, meeting her dazed, unfocused eyes, and delivered the final truth with the most merciless tone. "Whether it was me 7 years ago or you right now, Miss Lin, we were the same. Neither of us was anything more than a stepping stone on his road to success." I paused, then let out a soft, cruel laugh. "The only difference is that my stepping stone was more expensive and harder to break. And you? Well," I let the last words fall like a razor blade, "you're cheaper. And much easier to fool." The document slipped from Lily's hands and drifted to the floor. Her entire body collapsed into the couch, limp and hollow, her eyes vacant as she murmured, No, no, that's impossible. He told me he loved me? Her faith, her romance, everything she had used to boast about, all of it shattered completely by that cold, emotionless document. I rose to my feet and looked down at her from above, as though I were watching a pitiful joke. Now, I asked quietly, do you still think he's worth begging for? I didn't say another word. I turned and walked out of the cafe. Lily's collapse became the fuse that detonated Ethan's final mental breakdown. She returned to the rental apartment and threw the trust fund paperwork straight into his face. After a hysterical confrontation and physical struggle, she left, carrying all her despair and hatred, and vanished completely. Some said she returned to her hometown overnight and terminated the pregnancy. Others said a wealthy businessman took her in. But none of that mattered anymore. For Ethan, the two most important women in his life had both abandoned him in the most decisive way possible. One took away his career and future. The other took away his last emotional support and that pathetic fantasy he once called love. He was truly left with nothing. Starforge Tech, after weeks of struggling, finally announced bankruptcy and liquidation. Court seals were plastered across the doors of the office building he once boasted about so proudly. Ethan drifted through the streets of River City like a ghost. He sold his last watch, and the money he got from it was barely enough to keep him holed up in a cheap motel. He began drinking heavily, drowning himself in alcohol every day. The polished, elegant business elite he once was had become a bearded, foul-smelling drunk, practically a homeless man. Finally, on an afternoon of torrential rain, he used the very last bit of money he had to take a cab to the headquarters of Mo Corporation. The towering skyscraper loomed above him, its glass exterior reflecting cold, metallic light under the storm. This was the place he once gazed at with longing, convinced he would conquer it one day. He brought no umbrella, letting the icy rain soak him from head to toe. The rain mixed with the tears on his face, indistinguishable from one another. He rushed toward the entrance but was stopped by security. "Sir, do you have an appointment?" He acted as if he didn't hear them, trying desperately to shove his way inside. His voice cracked as he screamed, "I want to see Winmo. I want to see her. Annie, come out and see me." His hoarse cries drowned beneath the pounding rain, sounding small, pitiful, and broken. Security guards restrained him, attempting to pull him away, but he struggled like a trapped animal on the brink of madness. "Winmo, come out. I know you're in there. Look at me. Look at what I've become. Are you satisfied now?" His wailing drew a crowd. People stopped, pointing at the soaked, disheveled man. "Isn't that Ethan Liu from Starforge Tech? What the hell happened to him?" "Serves him right. I heard he cheated during his engagement and knocked up some girl. And then the fiancée exposed him at their wedding. Turns out his fiancée was the heiress of Mo Corporation. Picking the wrong enemy. Who can survive that?" Every whisper was a knife stabbing deeper into Ethan's heart. Finally, he stopped resisting. The guards pushed him down onto the cold, flooded steps. He slumped in the rain, lifting his face toward the skyscraper he could never reach, tears streaming down his cheeks. That entire scene was captured clearly on my office screen through the building's surveillance cameras. Assistant Quinn stood beside me and lowered his voice. "Miss Mo, do you want us to handle the situation?" I looked at the man curled up in the rain like a discarded dog without the slightest hint of pity or satisfaction. There was only stillness inside me, cold and unmoving, like dead water. I turned off the feed. "Let him come up," I said. "Some things need to be ended properly." At the top floor CEO office, the massive floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a storm-tossed city. Inside, the room was warm, perfumed gently with the scent of white tea. When Ethan was brought in, he was dripping from head to toe, looking like a drowned stray. A trail of wet footprints stained the expensive carpet. He stood 5 meters away from my desk, head lowered, unable to meet my eyes. The pride he once carried was gone, completely replaced by bone-deep humiliation and decay. I didn't speak. I simply sat in my chair looking at him, silent. The silence stretched on until he finally broke under its suffocating weight. His knees buckled, and with a dull thud, he dropped to the floor. "Annie, Miss Mo," he choked out, his voice trembling uncontrollably. "I was wrong. I really know I was wrong." He began sobbing hysterically. confessing every sin, taking every ounce of blame onto himself. He said he had lost his mind, that greed had clouded his judgment, that he had betrayed my 7 years of devotion. He repeated his regret over and over, begging for my forgiveness. Bookmark. Please, please give me another chance, he cried. I don't want anything anymore. The company, the money, I don't need any of it. I just want to come back to you. I'll do anything. I'll be whatever you want. Even if it's just a servant, I'll do it. His wailing was pitiful, raw, desperate. I listened quietly, my face void of emotion. I felt like the judge of a Supreme Court, listening to the final plea of a man already sentenced to death. When he finally ran out of breath, collapsing in a heap of exhaustion, I spoke for the first time. Are you finished? He lifted his tear-streaked face, stunned. He clearly hadn't expected that after all his groveling, the only words he would receive from me were 3 cold, indifferent syllables. I ignored his expression and opened a drawer. From inside, I took out a rolled blueprint, bound with a blue silk ribbon. Slowly, I untied the ribbon and spread the blueprint out before him. It was the design for a pair of wedding rings. The cut of the main diamond, the curve of the band, the engraved words on the inner wall, every detail was flawless. Ethan's pupils constricted instantly. He recognized it. This was his proudest creation. The rings he designed himself. The ones he had planned to place on my finger at the wedding. The ones he once bragged about constantly, saying they carried all his love for me. Do you remember this? I asked, my voice devoid of warmth. He nodded weakly, lips trembling, trying to speak but producing no sound. I looked at him, then at the blueprint that once symbolized our so-called love, and all I felt was a profound sense of irony. I stood, stepped around my large desk, and walked toward him. He remained kneeling at my feet. I looked down at him, this man I had loved for 7 years, and hated for just as long. The final moment had arrived. I stared into Ethan's eyes, where a faint, dying glimmer still lingered. That fragile, pathetic hope in his eyes. He probably thought that by taking out the ring design, I was giving him a chance, giving him a way to retreat with some dignity. But he would never understand me. I lifted the blueprint, my fingertips brushing across the elegant lines he once poured his pride into. Your biggest mistake? I said, meeting his eyes, enunciating each word with a clarity as sharp as shattering ice, was not cheating, not betraying me, not even your greed. He stared at me blankly, not understanding, so I delivered my final verdict. Your biggest mistake was mistaking my choices for your worth. The sentence exploded in his mind like thunder. He froze. The last trace of color drained from his face in seconds. He finally understood. I didn't hide my identity because I was insignificant. I didn't clear obstacles for him because he was exceptional. I didn't love him because he deserved it. I did everything simply because I chose to. And he, foolishly, treated my choices as if they were his own abilities, as if they were capital he could squander, abuse, even betray. Looking at his shattered expression, I continued. You thought Starforge Tech was your life's work? No, it was nothing more than a game I played with you in my spare time. You thought your connections were earned by your skill? No, they were props I gave you so you wouldn't be eliminated too early. Ethan, you've lived like the protagonist in your own Truman Show. Smug, thinking you controlled everything, never realizing that every bit of your glory, every spotlight, came from the only audience who cared to watch me. And when I stopped watching, I paused. Then, right in front of him, with the calmest movement imaginable, I tore his cherished blueprint in half. The sharp rip of paper sliced through the silence of the office, crisp, brutal. It wasn't just paper being destroyed. It was the final, fragile remnants of Ethan Liu's hope and dignity shattering into nothing. I let go. The torn halves fluttered down like broken-winged butterflies, landing on his head, his shoulders. The game is over, I said. His expression, hollow, devastated, stirred nothing in me. Even hatred is a strong emotion, and he no longer deserved any strong emotion from me at all. I stepped back, putting the final distance between us, and spoke the last sentence he would ever receive from me. As for you. My voice was soft, almost a sigh, yet carried the deepest, coldest contempt. You aren't even worthy of being my enemy. I didn't grant him another glance. Enemies stand on equal ground. Enemies must be worthy of a fight. But he? He was just a piece of expired, worthless bad debt I had finally chosen to discard. I turned toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. Behind me, Ethan's choked, animalistic wail rose, the sound of a man whose soul had finally been crushed beyond repair. But that sound no longer stirred even the faintest emotion in me. Goodbye, Ethan. Or rather, never again. The office door opened and closed softly. Assistant Quinn and security quietly removed the broken man who no longer resembled the person he once was. I did not look back. I simply stood before the massive window, silent. Standing before the window, I looked down at the city beneath my feet. The rain had stopped. The dark clouds had scattered. A brilliant rainbow stretched across the sky. The washed, clean city glimmered brightly under the sunlight. Everything was over. 7 years of tangled love and hate, 7 years of endurance in disguise, all of it ended with the sound of that paper tearing. A weight I had carried for far too long finally slid off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt truly light, free. Assistant Quinn stepped behind me and respectfully placed a black cashmere coat on the table. "Miss Moe, the plane is ready." I nodded. I turned, letting him help drape the coat over my shoulders. I adjusted the collar, a calm, serene smile resting naturally on my lips. In silver heels, I walked out of the office with steady, unwavering steps. Every employee I passed bowed respectfully. "Good afternoon, President Moe." I smiled and nodded in return. Yes, I was President Moe. I was Win Moe. This was the real me. The elevator descended smoothly and opened directly onto the private rooftop helipad. Amid the deep rumble of engines, a silver-white Gulfstream G650 sat quietly, waiting for its owner. The cabin door was already open. The captain and flight attendants in immaculate uniforms stood by the steps, greeting me. I paused at the foot of the stairs and looked back one last time at the city where I had lived for 7 years. This place held my most beautiful dreams and my deepest wounds. But after today, all of it would belong to the past. I put on my sunglasses, hiding the final flicker of complicated emotion in my eyes, and boarded the plane without looking back. Soft carpeting, luxurious seats, the gentle scent of white tea, my favorite, filled the cabin. A flight attendant poured me a chilled Perrier with 2 slices of lime. The plane began to taxi, accelerating down the runway before soaring upward into the sky. Through the cabin window, I watched the city shrink, grow smaller and smaller until it became nothing more than a faint light, then disappeared entirely into the sea of clouds. Ahead of me lay the clear skies of the Maldives, the cerulean coastlines of the Mediterranean, and any place in the world I wanted to go. My phone vibrated, a new email notification. The sender was the admissions director from Wharton School of Business. The message was simple. "Dear Miss Win Moe, we sincerely invite you to reconsider the offer you declined 7 years ago. Your seat has always been reserved for you." I looked at the email and smiled, a bright, genuine smile that rose from deep within my heart. I closed the phone, leaned back in my seat, and shut my eyes. Sunlight streamed through the window, warm against my face. My next destination was rebirth.